Hello.
I'm on mute. That's why you didn't say how you were doing. How y'all doing?
Hello.
Better now that we can
I'll
hear you.
do it. uh, I am unfortunately gonna have to drop fairly quickly today. I am double booked, but I just wanted to come say hi, make sure everything got kicked off okay and all that. But I have to be off by 1/4 past at the latest. So,
So you're just joining the platform as a product stream, right?
yeah.
You just hate
No,
us. That's
no.
why. That's why. I
Hey,
knew it.
Dominic shared. It was I created an invite for the hour before. Unfortunately, I think because he's involved in both to a certain extent, he grabbed the wrong one off the calendar to send it. So they should have been just a very overwhelming 2 hours in a row for people
Yay.
instead of being actually interrupting of each other. Still would have not been maybe ideal, but there's that.
That's how it is.
Yeah. So
Is it ever bad that
Hello.
back-to-back meetings don't happen back to back? I think that's
yeah, exactly,
feels
right?
like a positive.
So what we since we discovered the screw up kind of late and only one person noticed, it seems like we maybe weren't going to have the attendance
That
either
you needed
way.
anyways. Yep.
So what we were going to do is ask if we could use next week's general meeting and use the second half for discussion. That's usually discussion as like a walkthrough of what we've got so far.
That sounds like a great idea. Let me just double check who's hosting just to make sure that
Mhm.
if they have anything else going on that I'm not aware of just because
Yeah.
I'm not hosting it. And that way we can just be sure. So let's
Is
see.
anyone here for the the product stuff, or are you here for assessment? So Alessandro, you were
Oh, yeah. So the extra meeting, and since this was a free hour, I thought about joining and see what you guys doing. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was the platform as a product thing.
got it.
So this one, so that we will see who we have the right people for, but I suspect we'll do assessment during this hour. David, I've just confirmed it's Colin hosting next week. So as I said, I can't see a reason that we can't do that, but I also know that sometimes when people are hosting, people ask them directly about stuff. So if you can just
Yeah.
talk to Colin and confirm there's nothing else on the
Yeah,
schedule,
and he is
that'd be great.
sort of the nominal like
Lead
lead
for it. Yep.
sponsor for
Yep.
PAP. Maybe it might be good for him to um arrange meetings like this and stuff and advertise it and get
Yep.
people in.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely reach out to him and just make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have that conversation. I guess that I think that makes a lot of sense. And just to say, I don't mind creating the meetings. Like there are nominal leads, but then there's just admin work. And when Dom sent me all the things I needed to be able to create the invite, I was able to do that for him quickly. Like I never want someone blocked because the associated lead isn't available at that point. Like we all have lives, we all have our days where we're available and days when we're not. So if you ever need something like admin work done, any one of the three of us should be able to help you.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
But
You have a
yeah.
life?
For the last 2 years, I'm not sure I could quite say that, but I try. And to be fair,
6 months.
actually,
You will, right?
this one I actually think I have to help with. Actually, because making requests on that system, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who has access. Technically speaking, working group chairs aren't supposed to have access at all. I don't know how I got it. Someone just gave it to me, so I thought it was normal. And when I went to go put Colin and a tool on, they were like, "Nope." Okay. So we're gonna figure that out. But basically, no harm, no foul on any of this at all. But just have a chat for next week. Hey, William, I think you've got some background noise. If you don't mind muting, I've got static. So it might just be different, wrong mic, maybe is the.
So, yeah, it sounds like a motorcycle in the background or something
Yeah,
like
the
that.
mute helped. But yeah, something maybe a fan on a mic somewhere or something. I don't know. As I was saying to the early arrivers, I unfortunately have a hard stop in about 10 minutes.
Can you still hear it? Sorry.
Like this.
Bet you're better. Still poor mic quality and a little bit of background. Um,
What about now? Yeah.
Still a bit, yeah.
It's good enough. You're a little
Yes,
loud and
it's
clippy, but we can hear you.
and just, yeah, unmute to speak and kind of thing, and that works out well. But yeah, just wanted to join in. I think we've got almost all returners. Alessandro's joining us thinking that he was jumping into PAP, so welcome to the assessment. But yeah, I think today we're talking about measurement. So let's see if we have enough questions to run through on that and kick off.
I'm going to do
Or
my
med-
usual,
yeah.
I'm not even going to wait this time. So I read through the section of the maturity model, and I once again got the, the cognitive dissonance stuff happening to me. And, again, I see measurement, the product oriented stuff is only mentioned in like one quadrant explicitly, right? One cell. But this entire section to me is product feedback. I almost feel like the operations and measurement sections are really like one section of product lifecycle. They sort of go hand in hand to me, right? And then you could almost have a separate like runtime operations lifecycle or something to that nature. So I didn't expect the measurement stuff to be so much about just the pull. There is a bit of about monitoring your own performance, but not a ton, right? So that's my feedback on like the section and how it maps to like deciding how mature you are seems to be all about how much do you care about what user feedback and how you get it. And we seem to cover that in a lot of places.
I know we're focused on outcome, and that's what you've been kind of steering us towards, Abby, right? On a lot of these. This is one area, it's come up in some of the coffee chats before, and Steve's on, which is great because it's usually Steve that proposes it, to be honest, around metrics and measurement. We're not prescriptive in this area. And there isn't really a good article that I've seen that talks about kind of what we should measure. So we get into all sorts of conversations about, is DORA important to you? Is it ROI? Is it SLOs? And, some people have been asking, what should I be measuring? We don't really have a good answer because to David's point, when I reread it yesterday, it was almost like maturity level 4 talked about it, but not some of the others. I was kind of, okay. Not sure where some of these questions actually line up to. It wasn't easy just to pick it out and go, right, okay, that's going to be this question maps to this maturity. This one's going to map to here. It just didn't pop out to me like that yesterday.
I mean, I would think, for instance, if you're talking about measurement for the platform, I would want sort of like DORA signals just for the platform itself. Like what's your release rate, things like that. And I don't think there's much, that doesn't seem to be the kind of stuff that the section is pointing at.
Mhm.
So we could decide that that is a thing we want to put in the assessment because we know now, right? We're going to need another revision of the maturity model. It's just a question of will we be able to revise it to keep a similar enough structure that people won't feel like, well, I just did an assessment and now you've changed all the, cells and pillars and, I don't know that we have to change much in the way of pillars. But it does feel like we've hit a bunch of things that make it a little difficult. And so maybe there could be a V1 assessment for the V1 maturity model and a V2 assessment for a V2 maturity model or something like that.
And David, that's where my mind was going with that feedback about we're not being prescriptive. Because I was actually thinking for a lot of the sections, if there is a revision, it's actually, okay, what type of things would we tell people are, what to do in this area? And what does good look like? I know we didn't really want to have that in the model when we were talking about outcomes, but people are kind of crying out for that. What does good look like?
Well, and what does good look like even to progress in the maturity model? Like it's kind of implied in some of the questions, but I think there's more of a contextual piece to it that the maturity model can't handle, having to do with size, scale, type of company, regulatory and like there's just a whole bunch of things that can't be you can't be prescriptive much at all if you're not going to take all of those things into account.
I think there's an interesting thing here to discuss. I'm a huge advocate of doing this assessment. I think when you say people are crying out for details, and they're also crying out for, like, to get them details, they have to know where they are to, like, look for those details, and that is our hypothesis, right? And I think that's a really good way of reinforcing that idea that we're not making the maturity model something that you're trying to step through irregardless of what the status and the context of your environment is, right? It's that, what do you need? Where are you? Where do you need to get to? Okay, what are those gaps you need to fill? But I just want to say, like, we are the makers of our own destiny here. If we're saying that there is issues with the maturity model that we see are going to render this assessment out of date nearly immediately after creating the assessment, because we're going to want to redo bits of the maturity model, like, I don't know about you, I'd rather not redo work twice, create confusion, have things go out into the wild. I'd rather write a series of awesome posts about what we've learned here and why and what we're doing, and so still have output from all this amazing work that we've done. Like, I definitely don't see any of this as a waste, but, like, let's be pragmatic about where we want to spend our time and make sure we get the right stuff, the right foundations in place. The whole point was we were building from foundations, right? And we've talked about we need to go back all the way to the white paper at some point. We're seeing the maturity model is showing some shakiness and opportunity to improve after over a year and out in the wild. Yeah, so just want to throw that out there because, again, I have to leave in just a couple minutes, so something to discuss. But also worth, I think, still going through those measurement questions, getting some depth. But I'll leave that to the right people on the call. But sorry, William, please.
No, I just have a question. If we have those that feedback, that user feedback, looking for more details, if we have any specific feedback, we receive something that we can work on. I understand, Chris, you have some feedback, and that users are crying out for more details. Fine, great. Do we have it? Can we address it somewhere? Because if we already have it, let's definitely address it.
Yeah, I think the way Abby talked about it, right? It's rather than revising the maturity model, it's just giving some examples for each of the areas and the different maturities, and say, saying so that, if it was measurement, if you're foundational, this is probably what it means to you, but your North Star is probably something like this, where organizations are doing this. And here's one organization example, maybe a small one, and here's another big org, and this is what they're doing in this space. And that, to be honest, gives them some ideas, right? It doesn't change the model. The model is the model about trying to benchmark yourself, but it's just giving them that extra content, that extra guidance that they're looking for. I know in my org, we've had some conversations, and Abby knows this, in the last week about, what is a product versus a component versus a service. And, we use terms in ourselves that not everyone's familiar with. And so there's a lot of that sprinkled through the maturity model that really they're just asking for examples.
So you would have those examples as complementary text within the questionnaire or the assessment,
or a blog post that we point to,
or a blog post. Okay.
I do like the idea of blog post, because that's a nice way of getting content out and keeping on building a narrative over time about the maturity model and using the maturity model. It builds on it rather than replaces it. So
yeah,
I kind of agree.
Yeah,
with
I
that.
like that. I like that. Yeah.
And I think some of the things we have seen, was it from interfaces and going forward, we started seeing this dissonance in the different levels of the each of the questions and sections we went through. So you need to be here to be foundational, and then you read a bit further and you're like, so now we're flipping upside down, where scalable asked about something that should be foundational, and foundational was insights and so on. Wasn't it around interfaces we started seeing that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we're doing the rewrites of some of these, Stefan, we need to get that order right on all the answers, because they are a bit all over the place. Even on this one, there was a couple I was kind of, okay, does that really match up with level 3? Not sure. And that's what got me thinking about the examples. Well, What would our example be for level 3? So Abby's dropped. Is someone taking notes this week? I don't know if anyone's voluntolding.
I never posted the notes last week, so I don't know how much you want to. I can try taking notes again and make up for my. But if someone wants to back me up, that'd be helpful too.
Grand, thanks, David. We'll just run. I mean, we'll just run through like we've been doing the last few weeks. Just
go through the
run
questions
through and see what we think, and try. If we can get this one finished this week, then were we not going back? There's one other section we were going to go back to. I think Abby pinged us.
We were going to go back to interfaces originally planned. There was a date for that.
Right.
I think next week.
Next week, yeah. And then that's it ready for review. Well, wordsmithing and changing a smaller group. So let's see if we can get through it this week then. Measurement. How would you describe your platform success measures? I think I'd put a comment on that one. First thought was probably move that further down in the questions. I first thought was very similar to question 7, but it was only kind of once I started reading it again that, and I put a previous comment in place. I read both and kind of got the sentiment, and it's really thinking here. I don't know who put it in, but it's really asking, what do you think of your measures, your current measures? I'd tend to put that further down in my thought processes. I don't know about you, Corbin, because you were taking your original questions. You had an order to the original questions. I don't think that was your first one that you started with, right?
No, I don't think so. I'm just trying to bring it up here. I don't know if you want to share your screen, Chris, or maybe can someone share it or post the link?
It's in the first page. The link to the here.
So I think it's here.
Good point. I might be able to share my screen if I've got Zoom installed. Check. The joys of having a new Mac Mini and not installed everything yet.
Why shouldn't that question on row 2 be close to question on row 7? I mean I'm not saying to replace them. I'm saying to put them more close to each other.
I think like eventually we're gonna have to consolidate the questions and move them around and stuff like that. So I'm less concerned about right now I think the main thing that we need to look for is, do we have adequate coverage of the category itself?
Okay.
Are we hitting the main aspects? So I think my concern with the second one about how would you describe your platform success measures? Well, I guess you could say, I was just thinking about situations where somebody doesn't have a process for that. And so maybe the answer is there's no clear way to measure success.
Well, wouldn't a better answer, Corbin, be we don't have a clear way to measure success? Because we can't. I mean, it is absolutely plausible that an organization does not have a measure of success for platform yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, I started this by just asking simple yes or no questions. So the question would be, do you have a process? Yes or no? And so a lot of times it will be no. I would say like it's pretty common that teams aren't measuring success.
Well, and I think that there's sorry.
sorry, David, I just think that thing. The team's not, but the business might. So they might have, well, they certainly have a view of what it was before that initiative, and how impacted it impacted after that initiative. Otherwise, how would they keep investing? How would they keep budgeting the platform initiative, right?
I mean, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, there is the business isn't that well connected to that sort of value either. It's very opaque for everyone. And it comes down to a lot of politicking to get budgets to happen.
Politicking is, I suppose, generously called intuition here.
Let's not go there.
I think the first question there is kind of, the first answer is actually following the maturity model. It's, one of the issues with the maturity model is that it's explicit. The characteristics don't build on each other quite so well. Sometimes there's a skip. Like I think level 3, or is it level 2? No, yeah, levels 1 through 4 for that nature of question does cover everything in the characteristics.
Okay, let's just move on. Let's go back to that question later, maybe.
I've lost the sheet now.
It's in the chat, Chris.
Yeah, no, I'm just
Lost the tab.
I've lost too many tabs open. That's it. How is feedback gathered from your developers? Was that the next one?
My browser is like my browser is like my brain. Too many tabs open, and I don't know where the music is coming from.
How do you gather feedback from developers? One of my questions was, feedback is the main maturity model measure, but it's only at level 4. Does it break it down to other measurement types? Do the answers align with the model here? I'm not sure they do. So it was ad hoc, mostly from ones interested in the platform, through a feedback form, through feedback forms and quantitative surveys, through feedback forms, quantitative surveys. It didn't feel like, it felt like a good question, don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel like one that was aligning to the levels in the maturity model. And that's kind of where the examples came from, right? Are we saying level foundational, level 1 is just ad hoc, mostly from the ones interested in the platform? Level 2, you must have a feedback form. Level 3, you must have quantitative surveys. It just didn't feel right there as the answers. Question felt right, but I just didn't think it reflected the maturity. I don't know what everyone else thinks of that one.
How is feedback gathered?
How's feedback gathered? Yeah. And again, another one was developers. I think we'd said in the past, rather than just talking about developers, talk about platform users as the generic term.
Yeah, I think the text says something about you may gather user feedback, or if it is, it will be informal. And it states somewhere like, if surveys are used, questions change between runs, so you can't really track progression. Sort of in line.
I think, yeah, it's true. The answers don't align to the maturity model, though they shouldn't align too much to the maturity model, in my opinion. It sounds odd, but we say that the developers should be part of the development process of the platform, of the build process of the platform, so that the feedback is intrinsic and constant. So that feedback that we gather from the developers, shouldn't we have something on the line of, product platform teams or platform owners that are our goals is they are constantly working with the developers for developing to develop features of the platform, capabilities of the platform.
Yeah.
So that's what we should put as the answers should, let's say, should align towards the best answer is developer platform teams that do that. The worst answer is platform team that do like through a feedback, like those actually align, like is what we don't want to happen, right? Is what we don't think is the most effective way, that like ad hoc questioning of developers. Just throwing it there. Simon,
Okay.
I'm done.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it in sort of Scrum type terms, and that a developer is likely a development team could well be a stakeholder for a platform team. So I wonder if at a higher level of touching on William, your points, I wonder if at a higher level of maturity, there's there's a process and a feedback loop that takes place, and there may also be a degree of formal responsibility. I don't know if I'm
Well, that's in level
Yeah.
3. So level 3 there's a product manager
yeah.
that actually follows through on all this. There's nothing in level 2, sort of.
So interestingly, level 2 in the text, not in the bullets, but in the text, it does say that actionable structured collection of feedback is valued. The ad hoc one is the one where, I mean, even at level 1, it says that some metrics are collected to do with this. It's just that they're not used consistently.
Yeah.
And in level 2, it says right after that statement, dedicated teams or individuals might be assigned to gather feedback.
Yeah, so it becomes more formalized instead of being ad hoc. So I kind of feel that for the user feedback, the model kind of says it's there in all levels. It's more to do with how deliberate you are in collecting it and actioning it, rather than like, it's not really about, are you collecting it via a survey or in a structured form? It's more about, are you turning that into discovery to drive the product development? So feedback exists all the time, but it's how embedded it is. Like level 4 is, it's just a cultural embedded thing where we are continuously talking to the people using the platform and using that to come up with ideas to solve their problems.
Let me ask another question. If we look at all the questions that we've got here, and this could just be me, right? So that's why I'm asking it. I thought they were all reasonable questions, to ask about what people are measuring, how they're measuring, what they're doing with that stuff. When I read through them, I thought, actually, they kind of make sense to me. The bit that didn't make sense was some of the answers because it didn't align to the maturity model, right? But in general, are there any of the questions there that people think, no, that really shouldn't be here? Because I think most of the text, even if we took the what do you do one, right? What do you do? Do you measure? Where is it? How do you validate? Some of these questions, the question's correct, but then the answers are just like it was put out there and they're not really related to the model. They're just answers to that question. And that could be reworded, right? But the question's correct. If you've gathered metrics, how do you validate them? What do you do with them? Those are natural type language things that we would think about, right? If you've asked the question, then what are you going to do with that stuff that you've received? I don't know. So that was my question. I'm probably rambling on a bit. Are there any of the questions in the list that people disagree with? Because I think we're just going to repeat tonight that a lot of them don't align with the model. But the questions themselves are good questions.
So I think one of the areas that I don't know is really well covered in the model, but one of the areas that I was asking about was how are the metrics shared? Like if you establish some KPIs, like are you sharing those with the different stakeholder teams around maybe depending on what the metrics are, right? Like a rise in build time of over 15% or something, whatever. There's some examples here, but like are those metrics like shared with the stakeholder teams on a regular basis? So I didn't see that recognized.
I've put it
In
in
level
Corbin.
4, there's kind of you know, this idea that there's open data and insights available, democratization of data, actively involved, and you know, so it is there in the text, especially. Is that what you were asking about, Corbin?
Yeah, just like, so some of the, I guess, discussions that I've had with, you know, different organizations is around establishing a practice for creating these metrics or KPIs because they don't have a process for it. And so we talk about different types of frameworks that are out there. Like, I think Steve, you wrote a blog post around some metrics like a while back. There's Dora, like other, you know, other types of developer productivity metrics and things that people can use. And so the question is, are they are they sharing those metrics on a regular basis? Are there a set of KPIs that they share with their stakeholders to show like how teams are progressing? And that could influence teams that are on the platform that are getting the value from the platform, and it could influence teams that are not on the platform to come move their workloads onto the platform, right? So
I see. So you're talking more about when you talk about share. So to give an example, we're talking about measurement of how well the platform is doing from the user's perspective is most of what this is. You're talking about how is the whole system functioning, and this comes back to an ROI type question. When the platform is there, is it improving overall system performance? So like Dora metrics go up or something like that.
right. I mean,
I don't, that's not what level even let you, I don't think that's there because level 4 is improving. I mean, you could, I think, read it into that, where it says that, you know, the data is available to various stakeholders and yada, yada, yada. But I don't know that, is it implied even that the platform is also responsible for measurement of engineering performance overall?
I don't think it's responsible for that. I think the model is deliberately vague about the specific metrics because they're going to be contextual. Every organization is going to adopt a platform to solve slightly different problems, and they'll want to measure against those goals. So one organization will just be like, I'm going to measure the success by the number of CI systems we have within this building. I want to see it go from 10 to 1. Others will say, like, they'll want to solve cost control issues. Like, I want to see my cloud bill go down as a result of us having this platform. So the actual specific numbers that you might track, I think, are deliberately left out because it is so varied. But it's the whether you collect those. So you could just depend on feedback from the platform's users, but I think that ignores the platform's sponsors.
Well, maybe a way to put it more generally that will encompass those examples is, do you measure platform impact, right? And you know, it gets away from maybe because you can measure impact in lots of ways. Like you said, reduction of number of CI systems. Impact is more people are using it, right? Impact is DORA metrics go up if that's relevant to your organization, right? You could say like, there's a lot of this is about feedback collection, and the metrics are, it talks about data, but not even like what kinds of data.
Yeah, it kind of talks about how you link together like the qualitative and quantitative metrics that you collect to try and kind of build a bigger picture, but it doesn't go into the details about what those things necessarily are.
Doesn't that turn into a bit of a problem if you can't really tell when you're successful, how you're actually gonna tell that to the rest of the organization?
Yeah, I think the recommendation is that you should be able to tell that story.
Yeah.
It's just the kind of the ending is up to you. Like, what is the ending that you want? That differs so much.
I had a long, I had a long discussion with one of our prod guys the other days because he was trying to do this like financial model of telling what's the return of investment of doing platform engineering, and he was like, "There's nothing to be found telling the story of why should you build a platform." So he just slammed up some numbers. He was like, "Well, it's gonna give me like financially improvement of 3% or something like that." And I'm like, I think you're giving quite a few things here. Yes, but tell me what it is.
We've strayed into question 8 almost, right? Because there was a mention of ROI, and David's point, I think, was spot on. The term ROI, some organizations, it was one of my feedback, some organizations are obsessed with ROI. There was a session, I think, at Salt Lake City, that was one of the banks talking about their investment and the return on investment and reporting on that, and it was very heavy on reporting on the ROI. But other ones, it's not always the case. The measure isn't about maybe perhaps an investment, right? The investment might be, we've already got the people and we're building this with open source. We're not actually spending any money. It's, to David's point, it's about the impact of the platform or the business benefit that they're getting from the platform. That's what they're more interested in. I know from my own experience that we're interested in the transformational aspects of it. We're not really looking at ROI for that reason, right? We've not sunk much money into what we're doing. It's our own already sunk costs. So that was one of the only words I want to change on that one. The rest of it, 100% agree with what David said, and I think that sprinkles through all of it, right? What is back to what are the measures, and it's going to vary by each organization. And so for this section, if we're not calling out these are the things that you should do that are a North Star, it's just back to, are the questions correct again? And do you have a standard way? Is it, what's the lowest, which feels like ad hoc, and 4 feels like, okay, what do we think the best practice is for each one of those?
Well, level, maybe another or additional way to look at is level 1 is ad hoc. And sorry, William, I saw your hand go up. And level 4 is, why do people collect data in general? Because they want to do data-driven decision making, right? And, and you go from collecting data and reacting to collecting data and experimenting, right? And I think that's what level 4 was getting into, is like everyone participates in this kind of generative use of the data to do proactive things with it.
Mm-hmm.
William, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, David. No problem. So I am not fully agreeing with you, Chris, when you say what the organizations are searching and are trying to find out with the ROI. because what I found, what I experienced more than once is organization asking us, how can we measure this ROI? Even when I was at Platform Con London last year, right? I proposed an approach. I proposed a qualitative framework that I worked on for a few months, and then I realized I was absolutely off track, and it wasn't working. It was just me trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Mhm.
That's said. But I am with you, absolutely with you, when we say that we should remove it from here. The ROI shouldn't be a measurement of the platform in this section. If we want to have the ROI, it should be definitely in the investment. It's something that it's relating to the investment.
Yep.
But when we are, at least this is my understanding throughout the model, and then Corbin and Chris and David, everybody, just keep me honest here. The platform, in the model with the measurement, we don't go through the investment. We go through all those metrics that make the platform successful. Let's say more the operational aspect of the platform rather than the investment aspect of the platform.
I really like your
That's what I
feedback.
think. Yeah.
No, I really like your feedback, William, and I think that tallies with the. Are you building the platform yourself using open source, or are you talking to a vendor and perhaps purchasing something from a vendor? Because if you are purchasing something, you probably want that ROI. That's going to be part of your whole approach, right? And that, to be honest, I think mirrors what we saw at Salt Lake as well. Whereas, if you're building something just using open source and it's just your people and your time, you're not so much bothered about that because it isn't like a big investment you're making. You're not spending hard cash, right? And maybe that's why you've seen that more from your experience with working with potential customers, right? I'm coming at it from the build the platform using open source perspective.
Absolutely.
But I do 100% agree with what you said about the investment section. That was actually my first comment. Isn't this more suited to the investment question section? So I think we've come to that. I've put that in as a comment.
They're all going to be intertwined a little bit. I think we found that through this whole exercise the last several weeks. There's definitely going to tie in. I think right now, I was reading the first paragraph in the measurement section, and it gives you an overview of what this section is about. And it talks about one of the things that I key in is ensure long-term platform sustainability. And that speaks directly towards investment, right? So,
well, it speaks also towards investment, Corbin. I don't think exclusively.
Yeah, maybe not exclusively, but it this section is about how do you demonstrate, do you have a process, right? Do you have a way of gathering that feedback? And I think about it, is it quantitative data? Is it qualitative data? How often do you collect it? How does it influence your processes for development of the platform? Those are the things that I kind of key on. And also, and I talked a little bit about, so the questions that I wrote down for the one that I'm using right now says things like, do you have broad alignment on KPIs or success metrics for the value of the platform? Are KPIs or success metrics reported to executive leaders, sponsors on a regular cadence? Do you regularly review and update KPIs based on the changes in business needs or requirements? Does the platform track or enable developer productivity or experience metrics? So there's
but then, sorry, Corbin, I interrupt you on purpose because those are very, very important questions, right? All of that is absolutely and without any doubt affecting investment, because if exec or staff or sponsoring staff see see the value, they are more inclined to invest on it. Absolutely. But it's not measuring that investment, that return of investment. So we are not referring to the return of investment directly. It's inferred No,
Correct.
sorry.
I'm not talking about ROI, I'm talking about KPIs. So like it could be,
Right. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, it could be anything, right? I think to Steve's point earlier, like it really is gonna, in fact, it could shift on like an annual basis, right? Where the organization starts to focus on like something else. It could be cost optimization, it could be resiliency, it could be developer productivity, like and so it's really about establishing what are those handful of metrics that they're going to agree on, that they're going to measure over the course of the next 12 months. How do they measure those things? Do they measure it monthly? Do they do a survey? Do they do an annual survey? Do they do a biannual survey? Do they do a monthly survey?
And I think
They use
that
other
one,
metrics.
that's another example of this section, Corbin, right? That maybe we've hit a section that doesn't need to actually align with the maturity model exactly, levels 1 to 4, because what you've really just talked about there is, you know, these are good things to do. How are you doing it? And not necessarily directly related, but you're still trying to capture that data to help guide them on that journey, right? Are you
Yeah,
going to
I think
put
the
those
intention.
four? You're going to put those four good questions that you just kind of talked about in the sheet, because I think they're updated questions from what you had in the Word doc originally.
I like those questions,
They were
Corbin.
good questions, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I think what it ends up doing for me is it ends up pointing to some aspect of the KPI story that needs to be looked at, right? So it may be that developer productivity is like forefront. They're really mature at that. They have tools for that. You know, maybe they already have dashboards and things like that. So there may be like other areas, and they're not adequately sharing that with the leadership team so that they can see how they're influencing availability, or how they ship new software, or the rate at which they're doing that, things like that.
Mhm.
Does anyone know if all the chat history actually gets kept with the recorded? Because there's a lot of good points in the chat.
It might be accessible to, like, say, the leads or Abby.
Right, okay.
And it might be transcripted too when it gets saved to YouTube.
Right, okay.
I
We've got 12 minutes left. We're on question number 9. Keep going, play on to question 10. How are metrics aligned to business objectives?
now we are going back to Corbin with this one because that's very much aligned to what one
Yeah,
of the 4 questions he asked.
same as kind of what Corbin just said, right? So it probably just needs a bit of wordsmithing to align with those better 4 questions that Corbin spouted off the top of his head that he's going to add.
Yeah, I put a series of questions in, but yeah, this kind of aligns more to kind of the business side of things, and like what are the measures of success that the business leaders look to, I think. So as opposed to some of the follow-on ones, are more kind of the platform user kind of dev satisfaction and those kind of things. So I was trying to make a bit of that distinction, I guess, between the two, because I thought it made sense to kind of to separate them out. And then I feel like as they get further through the maturity model, they actually start to see like more alignment. I feel like the business leaders start to understand like the dev satisfaction is actually an enabler for the business. That was some of the thoughts around that. So I'm definitely seeking feedback on if this is useful as a way to reflect it.
I'm just reading the answers to some of those, Brian. Just
Yeah, I really like these. I really like this. I think the part where and I've seen this like in a few of the responses, is like when we give examples in the response, like it gets a little muddy, like because so like in the second one it says there's a consistent high set of high metrics. These are mostly focused on cost savings and efficiency that validate return on investment. Like that second sentence may not be the thing,
Yeah. Agreed.
right? And so when you kind of give that extra description, it may make people in limbo of saying, am I in that category, or I'm in a different category? Like I need to figure that out, right? Because
But that's back to the previous point about, is it ROI or is it the business benefit, right? Or the platform benefit. So if we work that wording out, then it kind of makes sense. We just take out investment and it's validate the benefit. Which I think is what you're trying to get at, Ryan, right?
Yeah, like
The business
I always,
value, the platform, is it being used? Do they see value from it? Yes, no.
Maybe that answer too is more about it was the way I see it flow into the next one is, there's a as needed proxy adoptions installs, like that doesn't tell people much. Then you go to this high level set of metrics that unfolds down to or is really basic. Like you said, it can be something about cost efficiency. It doesn't have to say cost savings, but it's reduced down to things that higher level business people can understand, but doesn't necessarily relate as easily to the business's objectives. And then the next one says, once you have it aligned, say you have your KPIs and OKRs aligned with an organization, and they can look at how you're performing and not have to guess, like, well, what cost is that? I mean, is it a positive thing, a negative thing? Is it,
yeah, I was always kind of seeing, things like ROI and that kind of stuff kind of earlier on in the journey that, there's still kind of that buy-in needed from the senior leadership and can kind of transition later to, how is this a strategic enabler for the business once you've kind of got over that hill of like, yeah, it's worth investing in this. So it almost starts, I don't know, in my mind, whether or not you change the measures of why you're doing the investment. So the return on investment becomes more of that strategic enabler, as opposed to it's just like, this team costs this amount of money and it's, doing this much of value like on the books. So yeah, that was thoughts around that.
I think I go back to the Ryan, I like the question and I like the answers and I do understand what you're doing with it. I just want to go back to the model one moment, and I had to go through it, and I'm still looking at this desire of measuring to improve, while this line of questioning is more of a measuring to validate and to further invest. So I have this feeling that we are losing the quantitative and qualitative part of the measurement. We are only looking at one of these two aspects. So like in example, the characteristic at level 3, the organization has broad alignment on measure that indicates success of platform initiatives. While this obviously speaks about KPI, obviously speaks about are we being productive or are we not being productive? But we also know that being productive doesn't necessarily mean that at the end of the quarter, the company has more higher percentage, because maybe we will see the results of the productive increase in 3 quarters. So
That's a good point. I get your point. I'm just
we are focusing a lot of on the investment.
this year's KPIs and objectives rather than actually thinking about the the continual North Star and continual improvement type approach. And that gets back to the level 4, right? If we are trying to align it to level 4, what is the North Star in that area? Because that's what people should be continually striving for. But then at that level 4, what's also that future forward thing so that they're continuing to improve rather than just stagnating and going, we've done that, tick, done. Because, yeah, some of these could be perceived as just, okay, we need to have metrics, we need to have reporting, right? We've got that. Okay, we're done. And your point, William, is you're never done, right? You got to keep on continually improving that.
Yeah.
So it's almost a question about how you continually improving in this area.
It's through measurement, and this is what I like also of the optimizing level. One of the characteristics says metrics and telemetry gathered is continuously evaluated for true insight and value, and I would personally say for continuous improvement. So, what did we do good? What can we do to get even better than good? So, and we go back from optimizing to scale. That's what I always thought that. I always see it, the level 3 and level 4 is a continuous movement between level 3 and 4. You reach that scale, now you optimize, you go back to reach a further scale.
Yeah, I think.
But
I can't remember who said it, but it's like the action. Like, do you take your metrics into something actionable? That's sort of the key part for this whole thing, as far as I hear.
Right.
I don't know how many teams who does that, but that's a different story.
Yep. 3 minutes left. Question 11. We actually got not too bad. Better than some weeks. How are metrics aligned to platform users? I thought this one was okay, to be honest. There's no metrics. We've got some standardized. We might have something like customer satisfaction. We might have industry stuff, but we also collect kind of positive sentiment and how those align to the business objectives. And then we're basically saying user metrics and business are given equal footing. That was the only one, the level 4, I kind of quizzed my head and go, I got 1, 2, and 3. I didn't get 4. Other than we're saying, okay, they're both equally treated. But is that the North Star definition? Not sure.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Please give feedback on that. That was I think that needs a bit of work. I think
just that one bit, I think, Ryan, right? Question 4. Because I keep thinking of 4 is your North Star, it's your okay, what we're putting up there is the most mature approach.
Yeah, I think like the intention with that was that developer happiness or that sentiment like would be those kind of metrics would be reported on at senior leadership, like in it as well as your other metrics around return on investment and those kind of things as well. So that was kind of the sentiment around like that in 4, but I'm not particularly happy with like how that's worded there.
What if sorry, Chris, I just dropped it there. What if if we are absolutely off on that 4th one in general, meaning
Could
that
be as well. Yeah.
meaning that not you, Ryan, not what you put there or whatever anybody put there, but what if so if we have a level 4, we have a product owner, a platform product owner, we have alignment with the developers, we are super duper, right? So that means that when I am working with the developers to get those capabilities, those features out of the platform, they have contributed massively to that capability, as in what's needed. So the level 4 there is them providing full set of measurement of metrics that we need to capture and deliver for them and dashboard for them. So that satisfaction that Ryan is referring to is the ability to correlate those metrics that have been given with the business outcomes that the business wants, and associate it to a let's say at the extreme right of the equation, that is that value that is identified by the business and by the developer and by the platform team. Crazy idea, just went off the pot, lost the whole lot.
No, pondering. We're over time, by the way. We're 1 minute over, so we did not bad this week.
I just wonder if is it like the level 4 that just needs some rework, just like you just wrote, Chris. Like, I think the other ones are good. We just need to figure out what goes in the last one.
Yeah.
I think for the question 11, the other level, in my opinion, they're good enough. It's the 4th that generates clarity, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
It's time to go into a bathtub and scream Eureka at some point.
One more week of this, Stefan, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that
But-
bathtub Eureka will be when we actually publish this.
Oh yes.
Crack open the
That'll-
whiskey at KubeCon.
Oh, that'll require several bottles of whiskey.
Oh yeah.
If
Not
I'm
a
even
problem.
there.
That's not a problem. That's not a problem.
Yeah, that's easy. We make it down the road. It's not a problem.
Like if I'm not going to London, I'm going to be so freaking envy.
Well, get it booked. I've got
I'm all
we've
booked.
got our places booked.
I'm all booked for London, so
Excellent.
this time, I heard from Matteo that I have some catching up to do, whiskey wise.
A very good time. It'll be good. It will
Be
be
careful who you hang out with, is what I've heard.
Well, you're hanging out with us, David. So
good. That's all
Be
good.
hanging out with my wife too, so
Is your wife coming this time? Are you coming?
yeah.
Excellent.
I have to book, but I bought this time I bought the ticket for sure.
I've got
So-
stories about us buying tickets, but I'll tell you that in person, David.
Mhm.
So one important question before we leave. What are we doing next week?
Next week, I think we're going back to interfaces.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
interfaces. Yeah.
yeah, it was interfaces, but are we not continuing measurement?
I think
I
we're
think-
we're once we've decided enough of a section is done, we're moving on. We're not trying to be complete with all of them, so
Good.
We've got enough sentiment out of this one in the comments, and it'll go to a smaller group now to, rewrite some of these. However that gets done, Abby will talk about that.
Right.
But yeah, we pretty much agreed. We've got through 11 questions out of 15, and Corbin added in some good ones that can get kind of go into the rewording. There's probably enough
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
you
I
can
think
also
we're-
save the chat, I found. So
Yeah.
if you hit the triple dots at the top of the chat, you can save it if you want.
Oh. I think one of the important note to take away from today is like make sure that when you talk about the measurement and an investment, make sure that ROI stuff goes into investment instead of into measurement. I think that's sort of a key here.
I did a little note on that ROI conversation to the running notes.
Oh,
Yeah.
are you recording into the doc?
I did for that one because it
Oh,
seemed
okay.
to be
Yeah.
a deeper debate, so I thought I'd better capture
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't have I just have my regular notes open. I forgot about the doc or where to find it. So
I'll ping you a link
thank
in
you.
case you want to paste it in.
Yeah, I tend to
Yeah.
put comments in the doc, David, as well. So there are some in each of the.
I'm just gonna stick the
Well.
doc in. I don't understand why I haven't done this before. Just put it in that first tab where we have a link to the actual model. Because I know I can always get back to the
Grand.
If someone would just solve this IT thing, then we would be happy.
But then we'd be out of jobs, right?
Well, I always wanted to be a lumberjack, so
You're in the right place for it.
Do you
everything
like to
is
dress
great
like
for
a
free.
girly?
Yeah, but I'm okay.
We are recording, guys? Just
Yeah.
reminding me.
Well, come on, it's an old reference.
Yeah.
You can't fault.
I'm okay.
Who is it?
More
The guy who did the
importantly,
Travelogue series.
more importantly, Dave, why is the smoke rising behind you?
Yeah, I noticed that since a while ago,
it is.
but I thought it was
water
a scent.
vapor. It's
Ah,
water
all
vapor.
right.
It was 26% humidity in my office before I started that. Yeah.
Oh, they
I
just
don't remember
noticed
who did
that.
I'm a lumberjack. That's actually Monty Python.
Yeah. I was trying to remember that or the name of the actor or anything. So,
Cool.
all right.
We're done for tonight.
All right.
I think.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
See you all next
See
week.
you next week.
Thanks,
See
everyone.
you all.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Have a good
Bye.
week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.